It's time for our Beyond the Podium segment. I'm joined now by Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, running for Senate against incumbent Senator Joe Manchin. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, first, I just want to ask you, in your opinion, what's the biggest issue facing this country and this state right now?
Well, our number one challenge is the opiate epidemic. We have to make sure that we get people better in the head and the heart. And I've been working tirelessly as Attorney General to do everything imaginable to tackle that problem from a supply, a demand, and an educational perspective. We have to be rigorous on enforcement, going after the drug kingpins who are poisoning our folks. We have to do education and prevention measures to make sure people know the perils of these terrible products. And we also have to make sure people get the treatment that they need, not only in terms of the mental health treatment, but so that they can get better, they can be productive members of society again. When we get that taken care of, a lot of other good things will flow. That, and of course, ensuring that people have better job opportunities in our state. Those are key issues.
When you're talking about fighting the opioid epidemic, does that mean possibly more money coming from the federal government?
I think we need a combination approach. We need resources from the federal government, from the state government, but we also need local communities leading on this issue. One of the things that I'm proudest of as Attorney General is that I've taken the lead to have local groups, faith-based groups, are out in front so that local communities are identifying the problems unique to their areas. And then you partner with the private sector, the states, and the feds to have a comprehensive approach on the treatment end. So more resources are certainly important, and we also have to be more aggressive on the enforcement side of it. We need an enforcement surge in West Virginia so that we have state troopers operating around the clock, preventing the poison from coming to our state.
You mentioned jobs. How do we fix that? How do we get the right people in the right jobs and West Virginians back to work?
One of the most important things we need to do is to build on the Trump jobs agenda. I'm a big supporter of President Trump, and I think it's critical that President Trump has an ally in the U.S. Senate from West Virginia. Joe Manchin allies with Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters. I think Donald Trump knows that I'm going to stand by him. His jobs agenda is helping out a lot already. The Trump tax cuts, Joe Manchin said no. I've been a strong advocate for them. The deregulation, I'm looking to make sure that we get rid of these burdensome and unlawful regs. Joe Manchin's with the party that wants to keep them in place. There are huge differences between these candidates, and I want to make sure people know if we get these regulations out of the way, make the tax cuts permanent, West Virginia could see a boom, a renaissance that it's not seen before.
Is the average West Virginian benefiting enough from these tax cuts?
I think West Virginians are benefiting. Doubling of the standard deduction, that's big in West Virginia. Lowering of the rates, that's giving more flexibility to job creators to invest more capital so we can have more productive economic activity. And these empowerment zones, these opportunity zones, they're incredible. This is an opportunity for distressed parts of West Virginia to invest, whether it's in manufacturing or other forms of economic activity, getting big tax breaks and lifting people up in these really difficult economic environments. I think the Trump's tax cuts are good, and I was very disappointed in Joe Manchin for saying no to Donald Trump and his tax cuts.
And talking about deregulation, the EPA, is that one area that you would like to see deregulated possibly? Is your view on the EPA, does it need to be around or should it be eliminated? I know many think that maybe it should be.
Look, the EPA was absolutely out of control during the Barack Obama administration, and I led the legal fights taking out the EPA when they tried to micromanage the West Virginia way of life. The EPA way overstepped its bounds, and I think that what President Trump is doing is dramatically curtailing it by reversing the regulations of the Obama era. I was proud to file his lawsuit against Barack Obama, take him all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and defeat his single number one initiative, the Clean Power Plan. President Trump's followed through on that and is permanently withdrawing that regulation. We need to go after all the onerous regulations and keep the ones in place that are just relevant for health, safety, and welfare of people. When you have burdensome regulations, they restrict freedom, they hold back job creators. We need to have fewer regulations rather than more.
Is it dangerous to deregulate environmental protections when we're talking about air, we're talking about water here for West Virginians, especially in areas where, we've got coal, we've got power plants, that sort of thing?
We need to always make sure that we're protecting our environment, clean air and clean water. But what you saw under the Barack Obama administration, they went so far beyond the pale. We need to make sure that we're having sensible regulations that actually work. This area is testament to the fact of what can happen when you actually have systems in place. They reduce pollution over a 20, 30-year period. But what Obama tried to do was out of control. It was reckless. And I think everyone knows that they overreached. The right type of regs, working with the state, and more importantly, empowering the states who actually know, who want to protect their own environment, that would be better. Let's shift more power to the states in this area rather than the federal government with its one-size-fits-all approach.
Let's talk infrastructure. Much of the United States and especially West Virginia dealing with aging, crumbling infrastructure. What can be done on the federal level to make sure that we're up to date and that folks aren't driving on dangerous roads and bridges?
Well, for West Virginia to thrive as an economic power, and I think it can, quite frankly, it's going to have to continually invest more resources in its infrastructure. And to me, that means the roads, the bridges, it also means the dams, it also means the internet as well. All those areas need to be built out even more. What you're seeing is that the state has taken steps to invest on the infrastructure side. Now the best thing to do would be to have additional partnerships between the state, the federal government, and the private sector. Because if West Virginia can supercharge its infrastructure, it can compete very effectively, not only with all the states that we touch, but with anyone in the country as well. Because we're a strong energy state between coal, oil, and natural gas. We have the potential to offer plants, manufacturers, employers, cheap electricity compared to others. That's a big plus. If we can get the road system in a better condition, the bridges, the infrastructure, we become even more attractive. And then we benefit through our location geographically in the U.S. We're within 10 hours of 180 million people. It's an opportunity for us to really boom if we can get this together.
Now to healthcare, many West Virginians do struggle to have affordable, quality healthcare. How do we fix that? Obviously, you're not for the Affordable Care Act or for Obamacare, but what's your proposal to then take its place?
Well, I'm dramatically opposed to the wretched excesses of Obamacare, and this is another major difference between myself and Joe Manchin. Manchin's for Obamacare and the skyrocketing premiums that really are hurting families. If you're a family of four in Weirton, or you're in Brooke County or Ohio County, you're really suffering from what's going on under Obamacare, and it's making it really difficult for private sector insurance to flourish. Joe Manchin's been oblivious to that fact. That's why he opposes every effort to go after and eliminate Obamacare. I want to go after Obamacare. I want to get rid of it and have a much better competitive marketplace in effect. One of the things we can do is we can allow competition across state lines, and we can ensure that we're going after fraud, waste, and abuse much more rigorously. One of the points I'm fond of talking about, the problems with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is that there were no incentives for states to go after a lot of the fraud and abuse under the new populations. That's a problem. Obamacare's failed, and they've set up systems which are costing taxpayers massive quantities of money because people didn't think about some of the basics. We need to reject this Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Joe Manchin, one-size-fits-all approach. And we also need to reject this single-payer approach that Joe Manchin said that he's open to, that Bernie Sanders has talked about. That would lead to a disaster with massive tax hikes, elimination of private plans. We need to move for private plans, more accountability, more risk, and we have to make sure that patients get to choose the doctor that they need.
Senator Manchin talks about West Virginians with pre-existing conditions, taking care of them. What type of legislation would you support to make sure that those with pre-existing conditions are taken care of under a new plan?
Well, there's no debate on the issue of pre-existing conditions. We have to make sure we take care of those with problems with pre-existing conditions and catastrophic expenses. And I think that could be very easily fixed. You'd see bipartisan agreement. Part of the reason Manchin's trying to talk about that issue, he's trying to scare voters because he's unwilling to open up Obamacare and address the skyrocketing premiums. And so I think you have to focus on what you can reach agreement on. And those pre-existing conditions, we can get that done in a day in the U.S. Senate when I'm there. Joe Manchin has a record of not being able to get things done in the Senate. As Attorney General, we get things done every single day. I think people will see that difference.
You support term limits.
I do.
Why?
Look, I think that you need to constantly empower citizens with a voice. And if you have career politicians, that's not good for the system. Joe Manchin's a career politician, been around for 30 years. I've said that I'm only going to serve 2 years as Attorney General. I've been here for 6 years. I'm going to honor my pledge. And I think the U.S. Senate benefits from this infusion of new blood. The House would as well. This is the people's house, the House and the Senate. Let's make sure we don't have politicians for life. Let's empower people to go in, serve 2 terms in the Senate, go home and serve their community.
Is that something you would actively push for?
I'm going to be out there aggressively on day one. Term limits is important. Joe Manchin's a career politician running for his 3rd term. I don't think that we should have people in place for all these terms in office. Joe Manchin should join me today in supporting term limits.
All right. Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, thank you so much. Good luck on Election Day.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.